Hey everybody, we're here to talk about Alim and Sakura today because these are the new units that we should be getting this week, and I am recording this before the news comes out on Sunday because it's just the time that I have to record. But we're pretty excited because Sakura is supposed to be a counter to Kain, or at least that's what people have said, so we need to evaluate if that's true or not. And Alim is also exciting because she is an increased cost MR unit, which means she's going to be a little bit better than the usual MR unit, but her shards are going to cost a little bit more and her pull rate is going to be a little bit less. So should you pull for these units, or are you better off waiting for Final Fantasy X? Let's find out. As per usual, we're going to thank wardivisions.calc.com for all the information used in this video. Okay, so we'll talk about Alim first. She is our cost 65 unit, and she is a Dragoon main. She's lightning element, which is very interesting, and she gets assassin and dual gunner subjobs. So far looking pretty crazy, and then your usual armor, helm, accessory that you would see for a Dragoon. Her stats, well, they're good. I mean, they're better than you would typically see for an MR unit, of course, with the increased cost. And in particular, I'd like to point out that her dexterity and her luck are fine. Like, her dexterity isn't super high, but her luck is. Her agility is high, and that's always really important to see on a MR unit. And her HP is good too. Her AP is very low, and her attack is problematic if we don't get any ways to raise it. And then for her master ability, she gets a whole whack of them. So she gets the anthem for lightning units, so they all get the increased 10% HP and then 15% lightning attack. And then she also gets attack resistance for self, which is the same as the Odin single target resistance, and then 10 evasion rate as well. And she'll get more agility on her board, which is factored into the image that you see here in front of you. So let's take a look at her resistances, and we're starting with basic elemental stuff. It's water strength and earth weakness. This is whatever. But then she gets charm resistance, paralysis resistance, and disable resistance, and then she's weak to stop, which is kind of bad. Like, being weak to stop, well, I mean, most of the tanks you see out there are Agrius these days, and you're going to face a lot of judgment blades, so, you know, hopefully she can just dodge them and not get stopped. But having that charm resist is always nice for live PvP in particular, but also versus, you know, units like Victoria or something. And then for her actual damage type resistances, they're so-so. So, you know, having the slash weakness is never good, but then getting that projectile and magic strength is actually kind of interesting to be strong against magic. Like, that's kind of nice. So, you know, overall, this is fine. I'm not complaining about this. Her TMR is a spear, which is what you typically get the weapon TMR for an MR unit, and it's a very interesting spear. You get some accuracy, and then you get defense penetration 15. At the end of the day, though, your Dragoon units are generally your big, you know, burst damagers that need to deal a lot of damage. They're highly mobile, and they can get into harm's way pretty quickly, so they need to take out people quickly. So you would pretty much want to put on your Ice Lance, or, you know, even your Wind Spear, whatever you have for your Dragoons, rather than equip this spear. But if you are new, or if you're hurting for spears and you've missed those previous spears, and this is by no means a bad spear, it's just you get so much from the other ones that this is, you know, not as nearly as good. Although, if you're going to use her with her sub-jobs, then, I mean, you could use something like this, because the defense penetration is going to do you better than the pierce attack up will, because those are different damage types. So that's something to consider. Next up is her passives, and this is where things get a little bit troubling, but at the same time, there's lots of good things to talk about as well. So your Dragoon passives are pretty much useless. You have your jump +1, but you already have 4 jump, and you have your increased HP, which is, again, not something she necessarily needs. But then you get evasion rate up, and you get things like acquired AP, super important for Dragoons to get their jumps and just be able to be in the air as much as possible. You know, missile attack up if you're going to go sub-dual gunner, and then your increased agility and increased defense penetration. Like, that is an absolutely incredible passive to have. So that's really good, but the one thing you're going to notice is missing that I said was troubling is there's no attack. So when you take a look at someone like Victoria or Kain or even Glaciella to a lesser extent, they all have ways to seriously increase their attack stat. So self-sacrifice, or whatever the one that Kain has, and then Glaciella has some ways to increase her attack as well, and she also has some pierce attack up. So Alim doesn't have any of that. She doesn't have any sort of way to increase her attack stat, and it just means that she's gonna deal less damage, even though she's gonna have the defense penetration. So that's something that is troubling to me. For counters, I mean, she's doing fine. I think that if you go evasion, then you have that evasion counter from the assassin job, and then otherwise you have the Dragoon's Blade one, because gaining back HP is nice. And then for Dragoon, there's not a lot to talk about here. We've got all of it. We've got jump, we've got our vertical jump or horizontal jump or Dragon's Dive. We have the Dragon's Kin. And then if you want for the sub, you've got your Dragon Standard, so you can increase your move and your jump. And I always talk, when I talk about Dragoons, that this is an amazing live PvP skill, but it's, you know, she's not going to use this in auto. And same thing with the Dragon's Roar, or whatever it's called, the decreased bravery. That actually has some PvE applications, but you know, the main reason you actually use this skill, this sub job, is to force your Dragoons to only jump, and that's typically because their jumps are the most strong attacks. They have the highest potencies. Your weapons give pierce attack up, and you want to use these skills, even though sometimes it's hard to time them because they need to have that casting time, but you want to funnel your units towards this, whereas if they have other sub jobs equipped, then they might not use their jumps depending on the situation, and that can be good or bad. So that is really the only reason you would use this sub job, is just force those jumps. And if you did want to use her assassin sub job, well, you're going to notice a few things. First of all, she doesn't have that armor cleaver skill. She has a different version, but you have to be behind the target. And then all the potencies here are just super low. I really don't see a reason to use this sub. I do see a reason to use dual gunner. So I guess the one reason to use the assassin is to use slash attacks if you need to chain, but otherwise dual gunner is more appealing because you get this defense penetration self buff, and you get the evasion rate buff. And if you're going evasion with Alim, then you're going to want to be able to boost that, and this is actually her only evasion buff that she gets. You're also going to get some range and some AoEs with these gunner skills, but again, you have low attack, you don't have increase in missile attack from your weapon, you only have it from the passive, and then you're missing out on other passives, so your dual gunner skills aren't going to be incredibly strong, although if you put her in a party with Nivlu and Frederica, and then she's giving them lightning attack up, and then you have your Frederica's Dream on somebody, even on Alim, then all of a sudden, well, yeah, you might actually be getting some good dual gunner damage. So that's something you have to consider if you have that composition, but otherwise, I really do think that, you know, put the best spear on her that you have, and then sub her Dragoon for the most part, and that's it. It's in particular, if you don't already have a Dragoon on your roster, that's probably why you're going to be pulling for her, and then the other reason would be for an evade comp. We're going to start with a MR comparison, so we'll use Lorenzo since he is the other MR Dragoon that we have in the game so far, and you can see that Alim compares favorably to him, except for in the AP department, Alim has low AP, and then for that little bit of defense that Lorenzo gets, but Alim gets the single target resistance, so, you know, whatever. Clearly, she's a huge upgrade. She is an MR+, so that makes sense. But let's compare her to URs, because I just like to do that a lot more. I think that shows you how far off from the top these units are, even though an MR isn't supposed to be as good as a UR. I like to see how close they can get. So when we look at other Dragoons in the game, we're going to use my examples from before, which is Victoria and then Kain. And you can see that their attack is much higher than Alim's is, and they both, this doesn't even factor in their self-sacrifice buffs, and then Victoria gets pierce attack up, and Kain gets, you know, defense. What does he get? Defense piercing? I don't know. I don't have Kain, but he gets stuff. He has some sort of a penetration or some BS that he uses against me in guild battles all the time. I hate you so much, Kain, but I love you, Kain. Anyway, so you can see that, you know, Alim, she's actually doing pretty well besides that attack, besides the AP, you know, HP wise, dexterity wise, luck wise, agility wise, she's doing really well in comparison with these UR units, and she gets the added benefit that she's going to be more evadey than these other two, and she could work in an evade party, and she also has that benefit of buffing your other lightning units. So there's totally a case to run her, but if you're just going to get her because you're wanting a new Dragoon and you think, well, I can replace my old Dragoons, that's not going to be the case. She's not going to be as good as the Dragoons that you already have if you're so lucky to have them. And now we move on to Sakura, who is honestly just such a cool unit. Now I have been playing a lot of FFBE lately, and I'm super thrilled to see more FFBE characters come back, and the fact that she's coming back means that we might have a banner that have Lastwell and Rain on them, or we might get their featured shards or some sort of thing like that, so look out for that. But otherwise, let's take a look at her. So she is a UR light unit, and she gets the Mysidian Mage main job, whatever that is, and you think, okay, well now I have to pull for her because I'm Mysidia Gaming, but you know, we'll see. Probably not, but I do want her. She's pretty cool. And then she actually gets another new job to us. She gets Power Word, which we would have seen if we had gotten the Swimsuit Katone, but we didn't. So now I get to teach you about 2 new jobs. And then there's Red Mage. And then stats. I mean, let's talk about those. She's got good stats. She has high HP, for a mage at least. And she has good, decent AP. Her magic is solid. Her dexterity is not the best. But then she has high luck. She has okay agility, but she has a way to raise it. And then she gets 10 defense and 4 spirit. So that's really nice. Like, those are fine to have. And then as soon as you supplement those, I mean, that really makes a big difference. If you put a plat robe on her, she has 28 defense. I mean, now we're cooking. And then in terms of her master ability, she gets that, you know, that anthem for light allies, and then she gets that's actually the 10 defense right there. You can see it in the master ability, and then the board node is luck, and again that's reflected in the graphic that you see right in front of you. And now for resistances, we've got the weakness to dark, which is unfortunate. But then we got strength against confusion, so you know, Agrius, get out of here. Resistance against slow, so Kain, get out of here. And then when we look at the damage type, she is resistant to pierce attacks. I mean, there it is. Kain can't slow her down, and you know, 10% pierce resistance. She's unstoppable. But then she has the weakness to slashing, the you know, punching. Cecil could punch her, or someone else. I mean, there are other punchers in the game. Weakness to projectile, and strength against magic. So you know, a nice little spread there. Her TMR I really like. It's got good HP, and then I want to say that it has good defense for a TMR, and I also want to say that it's not that easy to find defense on a TMR. Just compared to Spirit, I feel like so many mages TMRs increase your spirit, but not that many will actually increase your defense. So it's nice to have 12 whole defense on a TMR plus accuracy plus HP, and then you also get this decreased activation time for 3 turns. It's a good self buff. You can use it multiple times to the start of each fight, and then she could cast super quickly, which is definitely appealing. So all around, this seems like a very good TMR, and if there was a Dragoon ever that could equip cloth, then this would be pretty interesting on them as well, but Dragoons can't equip cloth, so that's kind of just wishful thinking. Let's break down Sakura's kit now, starting with the passives and counters. So you can see there's some familiar things here, like the increased magic up, the AP up, which is always nice but hard to make room for, and then mage's protection in case you're going against a particularly strong magic meta. But otherwise, we have some new things like Blossoming Thunder, which increases your agility by 12% and then upgrades one of her skills, and then Blessing of the Dark, which increases your spirit and dark resistance, which I really like. It's kind of like the Spellblade ability, which I'm totally forgetting now, Providence of the Dark or something like that, that will give you some magic resistance, except Spirit can be better when it actually works against any magic-based attack. It will work against Rain or someone like Ramza or Howlet that use slash attacks, but they have magic scale. And then for counters, we have some cool things like the Revenge skill, which is very topical or very fitting for Sakura considering her story. It actually increases your magic by 50%, so she has 10 defense from her master ability. If you put like a plat robe on her and you get 28 defense or whatever, and then she's able to take one hit, use revenge, and then hit back for some pretty sweet damage. She also gets magic reflex, which is always worth considering, and then power word guard. I named that, I don't know what it's called, but it has a chance to reduce all damage taken, which again pairs very well with her defense. It reduces the physical or magical damage, so she takes less damage from that and then from the defense or her increased spirit, and it means that again maybe she can take a hit or two before she actually dies, but that remains to be seen. Now for her main skill, she gets the Sage of Mysidia job. Hands down coolest job name in the game, and it's very cool in terms of its kits, because she actually gets lightning skills. Now if you haven't played FFBE, you're probably wondering why the hell does she get these lightning skills. Well, go play FFBE and you'll find out. She gets Light Blade, which is a skill, very low damage, but it's got okay range, super low AP cost, and no casting time. Then she has Thunder, which will do a little bit more damage, but does have a casting time. Thunder's Protection is a TP skill that's going to increase your lightning resistance, light resistance, and dark resistance all by 25% for 3 turns, and this will actually hit all of your allies in an AoE. However, it does have a casting time, so it's very appealing. It hits. I've actually been playing a lot with Mashery, and I've been using her Dark Veil to protect people, and it's super effective actually against mono dark parties. Well, this is just straight up better. It uses the Dark Veil and the Light Veil and adds on Lightning Veil, and it can hit lots of people, so this is 100% better and very cool. She also gets Thunder's Light, which is a stronger ability that decreases the lightning and light resistance for a target, and it does lightning damage. So this is an Imperil which has use in your PvP and your PvE different settings. If you use her in a light team, it's good. If you use her with lightning units, it's good. It's honestly just an amazing skill. And then Rebel Intention is her ability that can be upgraded, and this is the one that you hear the most about because it will ignore fatal damage. And what is fatal damage? Well, that is Immortal Spirit. So when Kain pops Immortal Spirit, if he gets hit with Rebel Intention and dies, which he will, then he will not come back to life, and your opponent will cry. Even though it's a one-sided PvP thing, they don't know that you beat them, they will cry. They'll start crying wherever they are in the world, and it's going to be absolutely incredible. This is also a very powerful skill, and you can see that it is an AoE, which is good and bad, but I think mostly it's just very good. It just depends if your units are right up there next to Kain or not. Actually, one thing I want to mention about Thunder's Light as well is you can't really see, maybe I'll put it up on the screen. It's a really big AoE. Like, it's, again, that's good and bad. If your team's up in the mix, it can be very hard to use that skill, but if she's able to approach a group of enemies, she could fry them all at once, and then also in a PvE setting, she could be a very good farmer. Then for her sub skills, she goes in a totally different direction. She actually gets Protect and Shell, and that's it. And that's fine. She has a really good main job. So this is really a PvP sub. Like, you would put this on and you would turn off Shell if you're going against, you know, Kain, and she would put Protect on everybody, and then she would follow up in battle. And I've actually been doing the exact same thing with Howlet. I've been having him protect my entire party, and then they go into battle, and then he's following up and using his Rune Knight skills, and it's very effective. So that is super welcome to see that, and I'm very thrilled that she gets those skills. Red Mage is a cool sub-job to get, except she doesn't have jamming thrust. Like, there's no jamming thrust. Just let that sit in for a moment. She gets Banishra, but she's not going to use it. You know, Asuna is okay in niche situations. Resistance Break is a very cool ability for raiding, but it's a physical scaled attack. It scales with attack stat, not the magic stat. Cura is, again, it's interesting. It's not a very powerful heal. That's my problem with it. I really don't see you using this except for in PvE, or maybe like live PvP if you need Asuna. But honestly, I think you'd rather use her Sage of Mysidia job, or or the power word job, which has a lot of really cool skills like wing staff, which she will use, like Kilfei uses this to increase her move and her jump. Things like fainting pain, which is a 25% chance to stun and has a casting time there. Undodgeable pain, which is a 100% hit chance. That's always good to have one of those on your kit. Step and magic is actually one of her highest potency skills in her entire kit, and it also moves her up to a target, which is debatable if that's a good thing for her or not. And then, I don't know what the name of this one is, but increases magic attack by 25, and that's for all your allies, and then spirit penetration 20 for yourself. That's amazing. So this will help her take down magic tanks, someone like Agrius who has a lot of spirit, but then the magic attack, you can give that to anybody. You can give that to the JT boys and they can use their jamming thrusts on everybody, just thrusting all over the place. Sadly, you know, Sakura cannot join them in their JT ways, but I would definitely see that you're going to use, you know, Sage of Mysidia for very specific compositions, the sub job, and then otherwise Power Word just seems like a really solid sub job to have equipped. Her LB is fairly impressive. So this is a massive AoE. It has a massive AP cost, and it hits 3 times. So that is fantastic for chaining. And then it does okay damage. It's a large type of damage, but it's just not, you know, as large as some of her other skills. But it increases dark killers. So if she uses this on a dark party, if it doesn't kill them, then, you know, her next attack will. So that's really incredible. And I think you have to be careful to use up all of her AP with this skill, but still, I think it's a pretty awesome limit break, and especially if you in a raid or something, if you're using this to chain, she has bells to, you know, increase her AP back up afterwards. And now for the unit comparisons. First up, we've got Skull, and then we'll talk about Medina. The comparison here really is taking a look at their magic. I think that's one of the most important things here. And Sakura has very strong magic. It's comparable to Skahal. It's only 4 off, and they both get magic up 30% if they want it. Medina has higher magic, but only gets 1 magic up 30%. And I'm not going to compare her to our calculators. I know that some of you might say in the comments, well, what about, you know, Halloween Little Leela or Ildira? Well, you know what? They're just different types of units. Their magic isn't going to be as high as Sakura in the end. If you just take a look at the index, you're going to see, oh, well, you know, Halloween Little Leela actually has a higher magic than Sakura does, but Halloween Little Leela doesn't have any sort of way to raise her magic with her passives. So Sakura is meant to be an attacker. She only has 1 healing spell on her sub job, and it's not very powerful. She's going to be a different type of unit than your calculators with their instant casts, with their ability to switch between healing and attacking. She's going to be an attacking threat, and we're going to compare her to other, you know, pure attackers. And in that way, she compares pretty favorably, because yes, she has 59 agility, but she gets the increased agility 12%, so she'll actually be faster than Skahal and Medina, although Medina gets a speed pass or an agility passive as well. Her luck is very good, and her dexterity is a little bit lower, which is a little concerning, but she gets that defense, she gets that spirit, and she has decent AP as well, and again, you know, decent HP as well. So I think that overall, like, Sakura's got a really good stat line. I think that she's got an amazing kit. I think she's just one of the best units that we've seen so far in the game. We're almost done, but we have to go over the pros and cons. For Alim, you know, she can be used in an evade team. She's a lightning unit, has that lightning support, you know, defense, penetration, passive, 3 different damage types, and she can mug turtles for Gil. But at the end of the day, she has low attack with no passives that can increase it. There's no casting time reduction, which is something Victoria has, so her jumps are full, the full length of casting time, so that's going to be hard for her to jump all the time. She doesn't get armor cleaver. Turtles hate her, they just hate her. And I think that unless you really, like, if you don't have a Dragoon yet, first of all, you should maybe try to get her, because having a Dragoon for PvE things like the tower can be really good for certain stages, and then just having Dragoons is fun. But if you already have Kain, if you already have Victoria, then maybe not. If you're building a lightning team, then yeah, she's really appealing. If you're building an evade team, then there's reasons to get her. But for the most part, I think that you're better off building your other Dragoons. And that's a tough decision, and it's hard. She's going to have that reduced pull cost or rate, and then double cost shards, even though they are MR shards. So there's a lot to consider when you go for her. If you pulled for Sakura and you got her by accident, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, and if those conditions, you know, were met by you, then yeah, you could go ahead and build her, but I'm personally going to skip her. Now Sakura, she's hard to say anything bad about. I think she's just incredible. So pros, super high magic stat. She gets light and lightning spells, 2 different elements, plus the imperils. She gets protect and shell support, all the self buffs, the breaks through immortal spirit, defensive stats, and then I said light is a tricky element for a con, and it's kind of like a cop-out. It's not really much of a con, but you are going to see dark units everywhere. You're never going to be able to, you know, have these matchups for the most part where you're safe. You're just going to always have to be dealing with them, but I don't really see that as a huge problem. And then no strong heals, and I say that again, she's not supposed to heal. She's not meant to be your main healer, but it is something to consider, because if you take out a calculator and put her in because you say, well, I took out a magic unit and I put in a different magic unit, that is going to be completely different in how your team operates. It's not going to be the same thing. You're not going to be getting heals, and maybe you're going to run both at the same time. I don't know, but it's not a like for like switch, and that's going to be an adjustment for someone, because at this time, the filming of this video, the majority of teams that you play against have either Ardra or Halloween Leela, and I think everybody has grown quite comfortable with the flexibility that they provide, and you're going to notice a big difference when you play with an actual offensive mage that will not, will not heal your team. So at the end of the day, you should maybe pull for Alim if you want to go for Evade or Lightning team, or you're new and don't have a Dragoon yet, and you should definitely pull for Sakura. I think that she's just going to be good no matter what, and I'm really big on her. I'm actually really having a hard time not pulling for her, because I really want to pull for Lardu, and because there's no time between them really. There's just 1 week gap. I don't think that I can really afford to pull and build both. I might do some maybe 2 pulls to see if I get her right away, and if I don't, then I'll just move on. But otherwise, it's going to be one of the hardest skips I've ever had to do, and not just because she's, you know, a Massidian. But otherwise, it's up to you what you want to do. You have to make your own decisions, and I want to know what your decisions are and why. So you have to tell me in the comments. That is your homework. I'm a teacher, so you need to tell me if you're going to pull, why you're going to pull, and then maybe a fun fact about yourself. And we'll see you next time.